Give me one sec. Let me get back on my Zoom here, and we will be able to get this going. Sorry. There we go.
It's okay.
There we go. We are live. Welcome, Victoria Awkward. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited.
Thank you. I'm glad you're with us, Omama. Thank you for joining us. Again, Omama is going to moderate the questions and see what type of questions we're getting. And Victoria is going to talk a little bit about the VLA and how you started it, the motivation, all that great stuff. We'll start there. And I'm going to drink my tea.
Okay. Sounds good. So VLA Dance is a professional dance company. I started it last January of 2019 formally, but it kind of was percolating before that.
How long before that?
I've been choreographing since I started thinking about that in college, so like 4 years before that, but we started working together as a group summer of 2019, and we did a little show. It was 3 people. It was me, Michaela Kelly, and Jessie Zizza, so it was just 3 people, and we did a little show called Sand. And then that show continued to move on to a film, which I shared with you as well back then. And then from the film, it moved on to be 2 evening-length shows that were held at art galleries in Boston.
Let me just, before you go on, I love that video.
Thank you.
It was fantastic. It just was so engaging, and the dances, I felt really connected to the dance.
Nice.
Go on.
So it started then in 2018. We did 2 shows at Fountain Street Gallery and at Abigail Givley Gallery. And so they're both art galleries in the SoHo district of Boston. And we did an evening length show, which is a 60-minute show of all the work inspired by that first piece, Sand. And at that point, we had 4 dancers, and it grew to be like 8 dancers. So basically, yeah, go ahead.
Before you go on, talk to me about your process in creating the Sand show. I know you did the choreograph for the video, but then it went from a small video to this whole production. Was that your first time doing something like that?
It wasn't the first time that I've put on a show. I did a lot of shows in college and pre-college as well. So I graduated 2 years ago from college, which is why I'm referencing it. But I didn't initially want to have Sand turn into something big. It just kind of grew that way. But my process, I'd say, is a very physical one, naturally, since it's dance-based. But I do a lot of research through movement. So for example, in Sand, we were talking about how we can emulate the grains of sand through texture. And then that went to how we can emulate the grains of sand through our movements. So we did a lot of work through texture things. So we're like, they're rough sand. So if we move really fast, does that emulate being rough? Things like that. And that's kind of like a pared down version of what we did. And then from that research, we do some phrase work, and I mostly put it together, and it becomes a piece. And then after it became a piece, I saw this pathway for it to become a longer show with more dancers, with more pathways, meaning that dancers could come in from different parts of the stage, they could overlap each other. And then the story grew from talking about literal sand to more this notion that we can all be our individual selves, like individual grains of sand, and still work cohesively. So like you see sand, it's a cohesive piece. Like you just look at the beach and you see a lot of sand, but they're little grains that work up and work together. So that was the bigger idea for the larger production that we did at Abigail Givley Gallery and Fountain Street Gallery.
But I feel like you're a little bit minimizing how much work goes
Oh
into
yeah.
a production, because you had program books, you have to work with the dancers, you have to sort of sell your vision to them almost, right?
Yeah.
What was that process like for you?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of skills that go into being a choreographer and a producer of a show.
Like what?
A lot, yeah,
Like what?
a lot of them are like physical, like you have to be able to dance, you have to be in shape. But beyond that, you have to be good at development. You have to be able to fundraise so that you can pay your dancers, so that you can pay for the studio space. For example, my company, we're working towards rehearsing like 12 hours a week. So that means that I need to find a studio space that can hold 3 hours of rehearsal for 4 days a week. And that's not free. I have to pay for that. And there's a way that I can pay for it out of another salary from another job, but that's not really a sustainable pattern to keep a company going for years, and hopefully years after I don't want to be leading the company. So development is really big in terms of bringing in funds that are not tied to my personal funds. And then there's marketing, which is what I did for Color Magazine. And marketing is like one of the biggest tools in terms of gathering an audience for a show, but also just getting supporters that are going to support you whether you have a show or not, which is what helps a company grow beyond just like having one little show here and there to being like Alvin Ailey, American Dance Leader. And then, yeah, you have to sell the dream to the dancers. You have to say like, I'm so passionate about this, and I feel like this idea is really important to share with audiences in a way that the dancers are going to come to rehearsal, that they're going to do the work outside of rehearsal to be in shape for what you're doing, and that even if I'm not in the actual piece or the show, that they will try their best to present it the way that my original idea was.
So you have to manage, you also have to manage people, right? Get
Yeah.
them motivated, get them committed. Many times you're doing this and at the beginning you couldn't really pay them. So how did you go about motivating folks?
Yeah. Well, I always paid my dancers. It's just the way that I paid them has changed. So from the beginning, I paid them through stipends. So
Okay.
basically, yeah, at the end of like a show, they would get like $150 to $500 depending on the show and who was supporting us.
Dance for you, do you think?
Yes, in a community class. But yeah, so there is like a balance you have to make, because you want to rehearse a lot so that what you make looks professional. But if you're not supplying a full time salary, you cannot have people working for you in a full-time manner. And believe it or not, there are dance companies that do find some like funky ways to make people dance for them full-time for free, which is bad. No one should do that. Yeah. But
Of course. But you also have, in addition, so you have fundraising, you're managing and motivating dancers, your marketing, which is huge. But you also have stage, all that, uh, all that, the set stuff. I'm sure there's a term for it, right? The
yeah, the stuff.
staging of the set. Where do you keep all that?
Yeah. I have yet to work with like large sets, although there's a show I'm working on now that will have sets. Ideally, you want to have a relationship with either the place you're having the show at or where you rehearse, where you can keep things, which is why it's important to like not just create these contractual agreements, but to actually get to know the people that are running the studio or running the show, because it can really be your advocates when you have like 100 costumes or you have like a huge prop that you need to leave, because you don't want to keep transporting it back and forth. So in San, we did have like a small stage. Most of it was done on a concrete floor, but we did have this little platform stage that one of the dancers' fathers made for us, and it was too big to keep moving back and forth in between the shows. So the gallery let us keep it in their back storage space, which was also kind of small, but they let us keep it there between shows. But you have to be pretty creative because a lot of these things are, they're moving, they have other shows going on. They aren't really set up to support just one company at a time. So you have to be creative in what you're doing and where you're leaving things. And yeah.
And I know it's a lot of work. I can see it. The dancing, the amount of time you spend training, the amount of time you spend marketing, the amount of time it's pretty amazing that you're doing this. You're basically running a small company.
Yeah, that's definitely the goal. Right now, I do have technically a full-time job as an optician somewhere else, which is people that work with glasses. And
Can you
I run this company.
Can you hook me up with a discount?
Yeah, friends and family. I actually can. When we're open again, come visit.
Yay!
Be very sweet.
But I always find it fascinating how art moves people to do, to push the envelope on what they think is possible. And you've done that. You've moved your life around to be able to follow this passion you have.
Yeah, I think that's like a lot of people ask me why I do so much even when I don't have institutional support. So a lot of people, all dancers need support from institutions, from companies, from communities, but there are a lot of people that wait until large museums ask them to present work for them to create. But kind of following in what I feel like my parents' footsteps are, I feel that it's really important to create and to make, no matter what your circumstances are, just to show that, we have power, we can advocate for ourselves, we can do things without like all the funds in the world, but we do need funds, and it will be better done and better processed when people do support us financially. But that's one of the biggest things that I hope to like empower people to start their own projects, to have hobbies, to start their own companies, because we do have like power, we do have a voice. And I hope that people feel that in watching me create a company from like zero, from literally no money to using my own money to fundraising $10,000 within a month, like that you can do anything. Thank you. And you can start your own thing if you'd like.
Before we go into a question that we have, I want to talk about ego. How do you deal with the ego?
Yeah.
And do you even have one? Because I feel like in order for you to start something, you have to have a pretty healthy ego.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you?
Yeah, I think it's like an interesting balance, because as a dancer, you're kind of trained and brought up in this way that's like, you're never good enough. You're always working hard to be like this ideal that you'll never be. And which is not necessarily healthy, but it is the reality of being a dancer. And then as an entrepreneur, you have this like inner guide that you feel like what your ideas are like worthy and should be shared on a large scale. So I often have this like inner battle of like, I really think that this idea is not going to just be beneficial for me, but for the people who are involved, for the community that it'll impact. And then this other one where it's like, well, I still need to learn. I need to go to like 10 intensives. I need to go back to college. Like I could get a PhD. Like, but I think what helps me feel balanced, it's I follow in the footsteps of someone like Marissa Molinar, who runs Midday Movement Series. It's a dance series in Cambridge. And she's a grassroots organization. And it's really, the idea is that the program supports what the community wants. And similar notion, VLA Dance is for the people, by the people, it's for the community. And I think when you have that kind of viewpoint, that the ego has to go away, because it's not really necessarily about just what I want, but like what I think this dance company can do to serve the communities that I care about.
Absolutely true. I totally get it. Totally get it. I'm gonna have Omama tell us what type of questions we have.
This is awesome. And thank you for sharing so far. So this question is from Brenda. It says, thank you so much for sharing your experience today. You are definitely a creative soul. How did you select dance as your medium of choice?
It probably started when I was very young. I was actually more so in acting, in theater, but I was more so in acting and theater, but the things that I liked the most about those like areas were the movement, not just like the speaking. And so I asked my parents to sign me up for dance. And actually what inspired me was I saw a performance by Urbanity Dance, which is one of the only like established contemporary dance companies in Boston. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I want to do that. And so that's what I started doing like at 10. But I am an interdisciplinary artist, and in college I studied photography and dance. So I do photography, dance, and film, and I'm always like invested in more than just dance because it doesn't exist in a vacuum. So
do you think that most people that consider themselves artists are interested in a variety of different disciplines or mediums?
Yeah, I definitely think so. For example, one of my dancers, Mitzi, she dances, but she also does costume design, and she does the costume design for my shows. I think it's really natural to have more than one interest because the skills just translate over different disciplines.
I think when you show up at different places, you're showing up in a different way. Whether you're showing up as an entrepreneur, you're showing up as a business development person, you're showing up as the lead dancer. You have all these different pieces of yourself that you show up with, depending on where you're going. I know with me, I tend to show up as an entrepreneur because that's my go-to place, but I'm a writer. And I love all things like stained glass. I spent quality time doing stained glass. However, I remember when I started, I made a cat, a stained glass cat. And the cat, you know, it's all these pieces. And the body of the cat was this little and the head was that big. So not all things can I pursue. So how do you know what to pursue?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a question that people ask themselves a lot in dance because it's a very difficult field. There are not a lot of jobs that you can get like a really solid pay and benefits from, so it's really competitive. So you're always reflecting like, is this the right job for me? And it's not as linear as some other career fields. So I generally think that if you're passionate about art, then you should make it happen because it's all subjective and it's all what we've decided is important. You know, someone said that ballet is really important, and so now everyone has to learn this when they go to college, if they go to college for school, for dance. But that's just something that we have as a society decided. So if you are doing something in dance and maybe it looks bad to a lot of people, but you're really passionate about it, who's to say that in 10 years that's not going to be what's trending? So I think if you're passionate, if you're organized, if you're ethical, you can make things happen. You may not be, if you're doing something that's different, you may not be accepted by the mainstream culture or by a company that you want to be a part of, but maybe that's not where you're supposed to be.
So we have one more question, but before we go there, I want to ask you, how do you stay motivated? That's hard. How do you wake up in the morning and get that feeling of, oh my God, to stay doing that?
I think there's two things. Like, one is sharing your ideas, because once it becomes outside of your own head, it becomes something that's more of a reality. And so more people are involved. And then you're gonna have days where you're like, I shouldn't keep going because like I should just get a degree in something where I can make a lot more money, you know? Like,
Right.
but if you have 3 dancers and they're like, no, I want to keep going because it's feeding my soul, because it's giving me purpose, then that like re-inspires you. And that's one of the things that keeps me motivated. And we've done a lot of new educational programming through VLA Dance, where we go to schools and we teach modern and contemporary to intro courses to those students. We also have a summer youth dance cohort for teens. And both of those programmings give me motivation and inspiration, because I believe in the power of dance education. And it just teaches you life skills that a lot of other disciplines can't. And so it motivates me when I think about the ways that I'm providing new opportunities to learn for students.
Very
Yeah.
good. I'm gonna hand it over to a mama.
Okay.
And
That's awesome. I love that you said, because someone said that ballet was important, that's what we need to learn. But obviously, the more that someone is influenced, then they can share the kind of dance that they're sharing. So we have 2 questions. The first question is from Anonymous. While things are closed over the next few weeks, how are you staying connected to the community, dancers, and patrons who love and support you? So that's question number 1, and then I'll ask question number 2.
Okay. Yeah, this is a very difficult time for performing artists, because our field is communal. You know, you're supposed to be in rehearsals with people, you're supposed to be having shows where people are coming to see you. But I think I've seen a lot of creativity from my peers and colleagues in transitioning their work to a virtual space, and it's been really inspiring. I have been supporting people who are already doing that work. I think it's important to also know when to just take a step back and like just support people that are doing something they're doing it well. So there are like thousands of online dance classes and movement classes that I have been supporting, that I think people should be doing if you want to be moving right now. Personally, our dance company, we're just staying in touch with each other. We're calling, we're talking about future steps and what to do next, just to keep the spirit up and to remind each other that we're here, they're supported. All of my dancers, although our rehearsals were interrupted in March, they've all been paid like they normally would have, because I think it's important to still support the company members and artists who have lost a lot of work because of this virus. You know, a lot of shows have been canceled, a lot of programs have been canceled, but I think it's just important to keep up the hope and know that one day things will be different, and we can also do things right now indoors through virtual resources.
Can I interrupt before you ask the next question, Mama? What are you personally doing in terms of, I know you're supporting other dancers, but are you dancing? Are you kind of creating your strategy once you get back, once we all get back to whatever that new normal is going to be? But what are you doing in the meantime?
Yeah. I'm working mostly on the summer youth dance cohort. As of right now, it seems like it still will be running, which it will be July 6th through August 14th. So in direct response to this virus, we understand that a lot of people's jobs have been impacted, and so their finances have been impacted. And so where we normally had 10 scholarships for the program, we want the entire program to be free for all the participants. So we've been working really hard.
That's wonderful.
To fund.
What's
to
the age
fundraise.
group? What's the age group?
12 through 15, and it'll be at Hibernian Hall in Roxbury, Massachusetts.
I think that's wonderful. So are you doing, I know I said one question, but so are you doing fundraising for the other scholarships?
Yeah, we're doing it 2 ways. If people would like to donate, you can just go to my website, well, go to the company website, vladance.com. You can sponsor a student, but we're mostly trying to be in communication with corporations, foundations, and grants, because we want to just really serve the community. And right now, although I do believe in community support, I also think it's important to be aware that the community might not be able to support with their own money. So we're really focusing on corporations and places that have money set aside to support something like this.
And I think Mama just put it on the chat so people that are currently on can go there and support. Mama.
Yeah.
So I have two questions on here. The first question is from Erica. It says, what's your personal organizational habits that have helped you succeed?
That's a great question.
Yeah. I think you need to have like a very clear calendar. I put if I don't put like what I'm doing into my phone calendar, I will not remember that I'm supposed to do it. It's not happening in my head. So everything goes into my phone calendar. It used to be written, but now it just got too complicated. So it's all on my phone. That like is one of the biggest things for me in terms of organization. But I'd also say that you have to carve out time, especially if you want to do a project that may not be the main source of your income. You have to carve out time to do that, and that time has to be separate from the time that you carve out for self-care. Cannot replace your self-care time.
Do you put that on your calendar as well?
Sometimes I do, yeah.
Okay.
It's more so like a schedule that is like a schedule that I have in my head. For example, I may work to 7 some days, and then I'll say from 7 to 9, I'll stay at a cafe and do personal work for the company, and then I'll go home and eat dinner and watch TV. But I find when I try to replace my self-care time for anything regarding the company, everything tumbles. Like I'm not able to show up to work. I'm not able to show up to the dance company. I can't do anything. So just like outlining time set aside for work, personal work, for projects, for work that's going to bring you money, and then for self-care separately.
So making sure that everything is on your calendar, in addition to that, to allot time for your own personal self-care routine.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. I like that. Oh, Mama, you had a second question. Were you just eating something? I just want to know, because you did not.
I was. I'm so hungry. I'm sorry. All right. So, as a woman of, this is from Anonymous, as a woman of color, dancer and choreographer, I can't say that word. The person that coordinates it. How do you look at as a role model to inform your thinking about building a contemporary dance company?
Wait, so as a person?
So as a woman of color dancer,
Okay.
and I can't say that word. Do you look at yourself as a role model to inform your thinking about building a contemporary dance company?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I think the reality is that even if I didn't have intentional thinking about being a woman of color, that people are going to see me as a woman of color. So I think it is my responsibility as a leader to acknowledge that I am a woman of color and to see what intentional things I can do to uplift other women of color and other marginalized groups, as well as be a role model to show people that you can be successful, that you can do your wildest dreams and still be faithful to who you are as a person in your culture. So I know that as an artist, it can be hard sometimes because you feel like you're pressured to make political work. And then sometimes you feel pressured to make non-political work. And it's like, if you're a person of color, your work should always be about empowering people of color, but maybe your work should just be about the dancer's abilities. And so it is a difficult road to balance, because sometimes I do just want to like focus on the dancer's ability to hold the balance or turn. But it doesn't matter, because I'm always a woman of color, and that will always be a reality when I choreograph. So I think that the biggest thing I do is just focus on including people of color. So I have dancers of color, people that look like myself. And then when we present our work, whether or not it's political or if it's just about dance, people in the audience who are people of color can see me and see themselves in dance. They can see themselves in art, and they can see themselves in leadership.
I like that. I think being intentional, as you said, is one thing, but who you are is woven into everything you do. So as a woman of color, as a leader of color, you have that woven in. So you have that, you're looking at that all the time. So all the choices you make, you have that mindset. The staging, whatever the dance, who you're picking, you're very intentional. It becomes part of everything you do, right?
Yeah. And that's something that is really important. I had to make a really difficult decision this year. I had like 8 to 10 dancers working with me, which was really awesome. But I didn't feel that like if you looked at the company, you would see like people of color. I felt like if you looked at the company, you would see maybe a diverse group, but the people of color were on the lesser scale. So what is impactful to me, like when I go see a show, I saw Dance Theater of Harlem recently, and they just like, I left crying because it was so beautiful to see people that looked like me on stage, and for me to go see and be like, those are they represent me, and it was so clear. And so I made a really difficult decision to cut the company down from like 10 people to 4 people, including myself, so that it could be more focused on uplifting and empowering 3 of us whom are people of color, and then also have space for inclusion, which is also important to me. But I really want people to see my company and say like, there I am, for the people of color to say, there I am on stage. So that's something that I'll always continue to push for, even though it's hard, because you know, there's only so many dancers, and there's only so many dancers in Boston, and sometimes you just want to work with everyone, but I have to continue to push forward my mission aside from just wanting to like be a big happy community. So
that's why I love that, because you are doing these educational projects. And when you go into the community to have a young girl see you and see the other women of color that you have, and say, you know, I can do this. I can see, I love dance, or I have this passion for it. And all of a sudden, just seeing you makes it a possibility, a glimmer of hope for somebody else.
Yeah,
and
100%.
I know we have another question.
So I guess I asked the question wrong. But it says, how does she look to, who do you look to as a role model, as a woman of color that's a dancer? So who's your role model that you're looking at for as a dancer?
Well, can we expand that a little bit? Because Victoria is a dancer, a choreographer, a business owner, a motivator. So you have, I'm sure you have a variety of people that you, a marketeer. Right? So not just one, name a few.
Yeah,
they're on
I definitely. No, I do, and yeah. So I would say that, to start with the dance one, anyone who knows me knows I am obsessed with Kyle Abraham. He has his own company called Abraham in Motion, and he's just I think one of the smartest choreographers that's out there right now. And he is a male of color, and he's just totally amazing at balancing what I was talking about, like having some things that are political, having some things that are beyond that. And then outside of dance, I have a lot of people that I look to, one of them being Josefina. And for those who don't know, I used to work with her at Color Magazine. And I learned a lot of the skills in terms of starting a business from Josefina. And I mean, if you don't know Josefina's story, you need to look it up because it's truly amazing. The amount of companies that she has started and then able to sell them and then create a new one. And I think in the dance world, there's not a lot of people who just like are able to have confidence to create and build these like projects because it's scary. And so I often look outside of the dance world for that inspiration. And you're one of the top people that I always think about, like, what did we do at Color Magazine? And then luckily
and
my mother.
I didn't say marketeer so you could call me.
No.
Yeah.
I know. And then I also look towards my mother and my father as well, who are both the best parents that I could ever have, but have done some amazing things for themselves and always serve as a constant reminder that where you are is not who you are.
Does it strike you as interesting if you think about where you were maybe as a teenager, right? And where you had, I'm thinking like all of us as teenagers, this angst that we had towards our parents, right? And then, nothing that they did was, you didn't want to be anything like them, right?
Yeah.
Yet here you are as an adult woman, and one of the two people that you're referencing in terms of who motivates you are your parents.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever, whenever you're in the programs with the young women or young men from the educational programs, do you ever think to say anything like that? Like, oh, wait till you're older, that's gonna resonate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I was just talking about this with my friend last night, that when you're younger, you're not like, oh, this program's really gonna set me up to when I'm a doctor, like I'm gonna remember this. But it's funny, like years go by and then you're like, this is directly linked to what I was learning at that program. This is directly linked to what my parents said. And it's just like interesting to see how that unfolds as you get older. And I definitely have, I definitely always like been inspired by my parents, but of course they're my parents, so there's things there, but they're truly also incredible people. And so they remind me that that my voice matters. They've always said that to me, and which is particularly important because I grew up in a suburb where I was really the only like Black girl in my class. And if they hadn't gone out of their way to tell me that my voice mattered, and that if they hadn't gone out of their way to introduce me to other people of color that told me that, like, I can't imagine how I would feel at this point.
Yeah, I think, and that's why I think it's so important what you're doing in terms of the educational programming. I mean, it's great what you do, the other stuff that you do, and the shows that you're putting on. But I feel when I think about all these young folks that are looking for inspiration, and you've become an inspiration to them, that must be a little daunting sometimes, right?
Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't really settle in. Like the most recent thing we did was me and a colleague, her name's Yasiri Sanders, we went to the Atrium School in Watertown, and we did one of these educational residencies there. And there's a young student there who I have been back to that school a few times, who's a young woman of color, and she's always so excited to see me. And like the teachers have told me that she gets like so happy when she hears I'm teaching, and she's always dancing and wants to be a dancer. And that's inspiring to me because it's not, when I'm teaching class, like the students are like talking to each other, a lot of it is controlling the environment so that people feel like they can learn. So you're not like sitting there as a teacher thinking, I'm inspiring everyone right now. You're like, let me get Jimmy to listen to me. So it feels really good to hear that, like after the fact, after it happens.
I think that's awesome. Oh, Mama, I see that there's another question, so I'll let you ask that.
There's a question on there, and then I have a question for you as well, too. So this is from Anonymous. It says, many times people think about starting a business when a little later in their career. What advice would you give someone who's thinking about taking the leap and following their passion earlier on?
That's a great question.
Yeah. I think that it's important to set up a plan. And I know it feels really hard because especially when you're young, you feel like you can't think 5 years in advance because you have no idea where you're going to be. But you should think 5 years in advance because you want to think about the increments of how you can move your company to be more full-time and like your other income to be less full-time. So you can't jump from 0 to 100. You can't just like quit your job unless you have the financial stability to do so. That's awesome. Go ahead. But most people cannot just quit their jobs. So you need to find a part-time job and then maybe a freelance job and then maybe like smaller and smaller and smaller. And the only way to do that is to think about it in a longer path rather than just 1 year, but 5 years. Like what can happen over the course of 5 years? And I think that's been the hardest thing for me because I'm like, in 5 years, I could be across the globe, but it doesn't matter because you can change your plans, but if you don't have plans, you have nothing to work towards. So that's the biggest thing that I think.
So then my question to you is, what's a story, whether good or bad, that occurred in your life that inspired a dance?
That's a great question.
Yeah, that happens a lot. I think if someone tells me I can't do something, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make a show about it. And then I'm going to invite you so you can see. But for example, I went to a study abroad program in Italy called Accademia dell'Arte, where I studied dance, contemporary dance. And it was a really great program. But there definitely were some issues in the program. And for example, one of them was a teacher told me that my weight would make it hard for me to dance efficiently, which is ridiculous because I'm very fit, but yes, I have curves. So I made a dance film that was called Voice, and it was about me and some other students that felt they had a teacher say something to them that wasn't great, and we kind of had a self-advocacy and activist moment through the film. So it happens a lot that difficulties turn into artwork because it's often the thing that you think about the most and it's really potent in your brain. So yeah.
Now, did you show that at a studio? Are you thinking maybe that would be a great film, actually?
Yeah.
There's always so many people that are naysayers, or they have something that creates a barrier, maybe or tries to do that, and to be able to overcome that and say, no, I can do it, and I'm going to do it, and actually a little bit of a motivator, right? But that's the difference, right? If you could allow that comment to, excuse me a second, to derail you, or you can turn it around and use it as a motivator. How do you decide when you can do that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think you definitely can't, as they say, fight every battle because no one has energy for that or time for that.
Right.
But I think for me, when something hits really hard and it's something I can't stop thinking about, and then I talk about it with others, and they're like, yeah, that's something that I've experienced, that I'm dealing with, or I'm fighting, and that kind of can be a turning point and thinking like, okay, we can do something about this. Let's create art that is activism. And that's another great thing about dance, is that like it's a way to create change on, again, going back to like grassroots level. Like what are we all thinking? Okay, you're also like not having breaks at your job and you're supposed to have a 30-minute break. Let's do something about this. Let's make a show. Let's get people to know about it. And then from there, what's the call to action? What other organizations can we get involved? Where can they donate? Where can they sign a petition? Something like that.
I love, as you know, I'm a huge fan of call to action.
Mm.
On a daily, I think I'm using that. What's my call to action for today? What am I doing today? And I know my boys, I have 2 boys, as you both know, and they're tired of me saying that. What's the call to action? What are we working on? Like, Mom. But I bet you anything, when they're older, they're going to be thinking that.
For sure.
At least I hope so.
Mm-hmm.
Think, Mama.
I think call to action is so important. And the fact that you're using art to send out a message, and who I think of is Childish Gambino when he made the song "This Is America," I think that's what it's called. And so if you listen to the words, right, the words don't really say much, but when you look at the dance that's in the video, that is the most powerful thing. And the fact that you're using like art as, or dance specifically, as a call to action, as a movement, as like, you can take something that's going on and make it into this beautiful thing that allows people to think. I'm just like curious to know now, with the whole coronavirus, what dance are you going to come up with for people to do a call to action?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's a that's a good question too. And going back to like, when do you decide to like push forward with an idea? I think that's where like research and dance go really well together, because it's often easiest to like attach to something that's like a buzzword or sounds like it's important, but it's like much more important to research the actual facts and the actual impact it has on a community, and then make a work that has like real valid concerns and real valid responses, rather than just like a general response to something that's generally happening. For sure.
Do you find that, you know, sometimes when I'm thinking about, I spend a lot of time working out the details in my head before they actually go on paper. What's your process when you're creating?
Yeah, there's a lot of processing in the head as well, and sometimes I like get headaches and like thinking about something so hard. So I try to like, usually I get like an inspiration and then I keep it to myself for, could be up to months, and then when I feel another push of inspiration, I'll write it down, and then I'll read through what I wrote down, and then I'll remake that into something that I feel like I can present to someone who could help me get the idea moving forward. But even though things may look really fast from the outside, it takes like a long time for me to process something. And I usually don't like share with the idea with most people. I share it with the people that are going to be important in helping it get off the ground, and people that I know I can trust with the idea before it goes to a public stage. I have a lot of ideas, so it seems like things are happening really fast, but they are not. They happen like over the course of a year to years. Right.
Now, how often have you created something, whether a dance, a thought, that's come to fruition, and then you are an observer in your art and you say, wow, I did that?
Yeah, that's something I need to work on. I honestly find it really hard to like sit through my own work and not find the areas where I can do better and like clean it, especially in dance. I'm like, oh, the dancers could have been more together there. Oh, that wasn't that potent. Let me like rearrange it. So it's a skill that I need to develop to be able to just sit back and be like, oh my God, I made that. Or, oh my God, I fundraised that. but I usually do not take the time to just like.
Well, you definitely should, because you've done some
Yeah.
really great stuff. And so early in your career, you've already done great things. Oh, Mama, I know we have 2 questions. And I'm gonna.
So the first question is, how do you get your art out there? What resources do you use and what skills have really helped you? That's from Anonymous.
Yeah. Cool. So I do a lot of marketing. Something that I learned from my work at Color Magazine is that we at Color Magazine would market an idea or a program at least 5 times in one day. So there are a lot of dancers who are putting out their own work, who like feel afraid to do that because they think it'll annoy their followers. So they market once a week. And you cannot do that because people have a lot going on. There's algorithms that make it so people cannot see what you're posting. Bare minimum, you should be posting about a show or a project that if you want people to come and attend, like at least more than once a week, 3 times a week.
How far in advance are you working?
In terms of the marketing?
Yeah. How far in advance?
So it starts with like the subtle drops. I'll do that like 4 or 5 months in advance, like an email blast. We have a summer youth dance cohort program. At that point, it's not necessarily so important to post every day about that because it's not happening immediately. And then as soon as I get closer and closer, like probably a month out is when I would start doing more intensive marketing. And then the week before, it's like, that's all you're gonna see. Like if you are somehow connected to me, you're gonna see everything about the summer youth dance cohort and you're gonna sign up for it because I'm using media that is intriguing. Like you have to have video, you have to use photos. You can never just post text on Facebook. No one will read that. There needs to be an enticing image that people will stop because they're scrolling for hours. Like what are you posting that are making people stop and look at what you're posting?
And how about analytics? Are you going back and looking at who's looking at what when?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's also something I learned at Color Magazine. You have to look at analytics because otherwise you can't change and grow and reach more people. So basically things that I've noticed, my peers are better reached through like Instagram. Colleagues that are not my friends but are dancers in the Boston community better reached through Facebook. Email blasts are like not where I get most of my polls, but it's a really good way to send out an email blast and then forward that to the head of whatever in whatever company and say, please come to this show. Here's the formal invitation. Yeah.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah. I know we have another question. Oh, Mama.
So this is from Anonymous. You mentioned urbanity and midday movement. What are other Boston community dance art organizations that inspire you?
Yeah. So midday movement that I mentioned is one that I'm also involved with. I'm one of the teachers. And it's just one of my favorite organizations in Boston because of the director, Marissa Molinar, who's just so down to earth. But there's also Integrarte. They do ballet in Jamaica Plain. Really amazing ballet classes. They both used to dance for Boston Ballet, so they have great training. Jose Mateo Ballet Theater in Cambridge, also great ballet training. And then, of course, the Dance Complex in Cambridge has lots of community classes and also opportunities for professional dancers in performing and in rehearsing and also in class taking. There's also Studio 550, which is in Cambridge, which is similar to the Dance Complex. They offer professional classes and like you can rent your own space, and there's community-based classes as well. But we're definitely seeing a difficult time for the arts in Boston and Cambridge. We've had some really impactful closures. There's a closure of Green Street Dance Studio, which was in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and which was really hard for the dance community because a lot of us rehearsed there. And it was Diversified the opportunity to rehearse. But hopefully, and I know there are people who are pushing forward to create more opportunities and to create more professional opportunities for people to continue training. But I definitely say when I'm looking for professional classes, I always go to Midday Movement, Urbanity, the Dance Complex, and Studio 550 has like a great Sunday series that they were doing, and Jose Mateo and Intergarte. They all have really, really good classes. And of course, Boston Ballet. But
Victoria, how about if you're not a dancer, but you've always wanted to take dance classes? What are your recommendations?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, there's a lot, and there's things I'm missing, but the Dance Complex and both the Dance Complex and Studio 550 have a lot of open level classes. So you can take anything from salsa to Afro, Cuban dance. You can take anything from ballet to modern, and it's all open level so that you can start at beginner levels. And it's really accessible. Dance Complex, I think they might be a .com or a .org, but yeah.
Super. Well, we are getting ready to wrap up. Do you have anything you want to add? What should I'm thinking you're going to be sending out email blasts with your what's coming up next soon. Yes?
Yeah, definitely.
So what do we have to look forward to in the next couple months? Well,
yeah,
as we come back to our new normal, what do we have that we can look forward to from you?
Yeah, so there's gonna be the Summer Youth Dance Cohort in July through August. Again, that's for ages 12 through 15. And if you don't know anyone in that age group, you're welcome to support the people that would be going.
For 1 minute, I thought she was going to say, if you're not in that age group, join us. So I was like, yeah!
Maybe we might have open class. The professional company will potentially have a show in November, depending on what is still happening with the virus that's out there. But all of that will be accessible on the website vladance.com or on our Instagram or Facebook, which is @dancevla.
Super. Well, Victoria, it was a pleasure seeing you. It's so great to hear about all the exciting things you have going on. And candidly, I couldn't be any prouder of you. Not that I had anything to do with it, but it's just so energizing to see a young woman really invigorated and pursuing her dreams. I'm really moved by that. Thank you again. And we'll be back on Monday at 1 o'clock. Thank you, Omama, for moderating, and we will be closing out. Thank you.
Thank you.